Earlier today, I thought it might be a good idea to try to record something concerning the sentiment that I often feel with respect to same-sex attraction, that is being stuck between a rock and a hard place. I suspect that it's a position that a lot of people that are the side B will relate to some extent. Even the people that are on side B represent kind of part of the problem, because the church really doesn't have anything to offer you in the way of a solution, of a practical, workable, viable solution, a series of steps, anything that even remotely resembles a 12-step program for alcoholics, for lack of a better example. And it's not the church's fault. I don't think anyone really knows how to address that as a problem, mostly because it has been something that people have always just kind of internalized and kept to themselves, and that has driven people to all kinds of unfortunate ends, maybe some fortuitous happy ends, but I suspect mostly bitter ones. That's, of course, just a presumption on my part, but the feeling of being stuck between a rock and a hard place, for me, derives from the fact that you're not really free to go to the church for the reasons that I just stated, highlighted. They don't have answers for you. They'd really rather not hear about it. If they do, or they are willing to hear about it, they'll entertain it or hear it once, and they kind of really don't want to be reminded of it. They want to pretend that it's something that has gone away, or that you're addressing, or that we don't talk about it. It's not something you'll get asked about often after you have come out to your pastor, to an elder, or basically anyone in the church. So that's the rock, I guess, if you will. The hard place is the places where you would normally turn for counsel, or turn when the church doesn't have anything to give you, which is usually your family or your friends. And in this case, your family and your friends, particularly if they are not believers, don't have answers to give you either. The only answers that they can give you, and that they are glad to give you, are ones that will turn you away from your faith, that tells you that this is something that God does not approve of, and therefore something that you cannot embrace or indulge in any way, shape, or form. Otherwise, they would gladly tell you, you know what, just, God is love, and all those other cliche things, and they'd kind of try to appease your spirituality in some way, but because they don't believe and they're not themselves afflicted with the particular affliction that you are, they don't understand. So they mean well, and they would want to see you happy, and they think that you happy is you just doing what you do, which is feeling how you feel and finding yourself somebody that you love, even if they are of the same sex, and pursuing happiness through that route. But that is not an option for you. So you can't really have a conversation with them, because that's where those conversations end. They end with them telling you, well, you know what, if you can't do it, you're unhappy, then just let the church go and pursue the happiness that you know how to find, or some variation thereof. Because what else are they going to tell you? And again, with all of this, there are no answers. There are no solutions. I don't believe that there is some kind of hidden secret solution that somebody just hasn't uncovered, which makes it all the more frustrating. But that's the sentiment. That's how I feel, and it creates a particular kind of loneliness, which encourages you to be shallow, both with the church and with your friends and your family, because you can't admit that you are still having that problem to the church, because they will not really have much to give you. And you can't admit that same problem to your family and your friends, because they will tell you, you know what, maybe you've tried this long enough, it's not working for you, try something else. You know, because that's what unbelievers say, or would say. So you're superficial because you keep that aspect of yourself, that struggle that you face on a daily basis, to yourself. In part because you fear the answers that they might give you. You know that you can't follow them. You know they would feel good if you followed your friend and your family's advice, but that's not compatible with the beliefs that you hold, with your faith. So it's better not to even raise that issue at all. And so you conceal what is for you an intense and significant struggle, personal struggle, from them, so they don't really know what's going on with you. And the same applies for the church, to a greater extent, because it is even more taboo to mention there. And the church is going to direct you to do more introspection and figure out what it is you're doing wrong, where you haven't surrendered sufficiently or adequately or correctly, or whatever way it is that you have somehow failed that has caused God to not deliver you from this sin, from this, that God has not healed you, which, as I've stated before in previous recordings, gets real old real fast. And again, as I've stated before, is not the biblical standard that Christ applied to any of the persons that he personally saved. He didn't subject them to 20 questions and proofs of the authenticity or veracity of their petitions, their faith, their belief. They merely came to him, and that was taken by Christ as sufficient proof that they believed. As I've stated before, we don't have the ability to physically see Christ, but we come to him in the same way, only that we come to him spiritually, and therefore no further evidence or proof is required. Now, if he does not heal you or deliver you, then I don't know why, but he does. So the question becomes then for the afflicted believer, how do you live with that? And it becomes a matter that you kind of have to work out for yourself. And that gets very lonely and very taxing, but there kind of really isn't an alternative. You're stuck between a rock and a hard place. And initially when I mentioned that, maybe side B people would understand a little bit, I hesitate to bring them up as an example, because when you delve into those communities online, generally what you find are groups of people that kind of ultimately look to some kind of an excuse, or finding some sort of scriptural loophole, or some novel way of interpreting passages, or novel way of translating the Greek into the into the blah blah blah, and finding a way to do what they want to do. And I know that would normally be side A, but the side B people do the same thing. They do it in a different way. They try to find, different ways of existing in a relationship without being in relationships, and communal living, and it gets weird. It gets weird, and it feels like you're trying to split hairs or reinvent the wheel, and it just doesn't feel right. It feels like the first step on a slippery slope. And I don't fault them necessarily for it, because they're trying to find a solution when none is evident. No solution or alternative or strategy is clear. So we're all grasping at straws, but it still feels like it's a dangerous place to go, because it almost feels like you're going back into the bar as an alcoholic, hoping that you'll find somebody else in the bar that's also a recovering alcoholic. It's just not a good. It has a bad feeling to it. That's just me. That's my opinion. And so there's really kind of no place for you to go, no source of wisdom for you to turn to, no paradigm, no proven strategy for overcoming. So that's what I mean when I say that it feels like being stuck between a rock and a hard place. You have to keep your struggle to yourself for different reasons. Different reasons for family, different reasons for church, different reasons for friends, different reasons for church. But in the end, the struggle, you have to keep it to yourself for the most part. And maybe that'll resonate with somebody out there who's listening or watching this if I post it. Because it is something that I often feel, and it is kind of one of the reasons why I feel that as a Christian I am lonelier than I've ever been in my life, in large part because of that. The world is happy to have you as a friend, and they are happy to indulge almost any behavior that isn't overtly pathological. And so same-sex attraction is a non-issue for most of the people in the Western world. So it's much easier to have friends in the world if you're not a believer. But the church is equally restricting in that it doesn't have language or practice that can explain how you go forward in your life with that as an ongoing, with same-sex attraction as an ongoing issue. So they don't talk about it. They pretend that you're getting over it, that you'll get over it, that you need to pray on it or work on it or surrender this or surrender that, or it's a circle that breeds a great deal of loneliness, more loneliness than if you were in the world, and certainly more loneliness than if you were a believer in the church who was not afflicted with same-sex attraction. In many regards, it would almost be easier if you were a thief or an alcoholic in the church, where they could direct you to a program or, offer you a job or something, but they have nothing to offer you. So you are lonely there. And one would think, entering into the church, that you're entering into a family of believers where you will never be lonely again, but that is quite removed from the practical experience of entering the church as a person with same-sex attraction, whose same-sex attraction persists years later. You're lonelier. And maybe that falls under the category of things that we're to expect as believers. Difficulty, hardship, tribulation. And it is my particular cross to bear, and Maybe one day in heaven I will be rewarded for bearing it. I don't know. But undeniably, it is a much lonelier life, and when you attempt to turn it into a more friend-filled life, you start courting company that is probably not spiritually beneficial for you. So you have to eschew it. So anyway, at least hopefully this will resonate with somebody. If you're hearing this, you're not alone. You're not the only person that's felt this way. I've felt this way for a very long time now. And we'll see where God wants to go with this, where He wants to take me. But don't give up. Don't give in. This is all part of God's plan, and none of it is outside of His sovereign ability to act. And He promised that He will never leave us, and He won't. So, God bless, and thanks for listening.